All right, you ready?
Yep.
Okay. Uh, Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever it is, whatever time, wherever you're listening. Welcome to the podcast, Brock.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So, as we're recording this, we are in the midst. I feel like even just Monday was a different world than it is right now. So, how are things? You're on the other side of the country. So, how are
hmm
things over there?
Yeah, I'm in California. We went full lockdown as of last night. So pretty much all non-essentials are currently closed, which is tough. But personally speaking, we're doing all right here at my house. We're perfectly stocked up on everything and healthy young adults. So we're just trying not to spread anything, trying to do our best to, just do our part in the social distancing. But it's definitely a chaotic time, especially because I would be home right now anyways for spring break. But now we've been receiving almost daily emails from our school with updates about how spring classes are going to be online. They're still trying to figure out like what they're going to do with football practice for the next few months and how that's all going to work. So it's just, I think like everyone, so much is up in the air and so much is still unknown.
Yeah, and I think that's the weirdest part too. I can relate to that where you're young and healthy, and so you're kind of like, but I'm fine.
hmm
So yeah, taking everything in with a grain of salt. So we're excited to have you. I think it's a perfect time, with everything going on. Just love Brock's positive energy, like everything that you bring, on social media and on the podcast. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I guess really the beginning of me would be my parents. And in raising me, I grew up in a very entrepreneurial household. They had both owned businesses my whole life, so I got to see from a very young age, like the freedom that allowed them to take my sister and I to school, to prioritize coming to our sporting events, to just be really family first. They preached that, and they definitely walked the walk in our own house. So from a very young age, that was instilled in me. My freshman year of college was when I started really my first real business. My whole life, I've been owning like little tiny businesses and doing little companies and selling things. But my
Was it
first real business, go
was it
ahead.
your first business? Like, weren't you selling like armbands or something?
Yeah.
Like, you were a
Yeah.
true young entrepreneur.
Yeah, the old Power Balance wristbands, if anyone remembers those from like the mid 2000s. I took those and I would like put rhinestones on them,
Oh my gosh, I
and I would
love it.
sell those to like at my mom's like workout classes. I'd go and like sell them to people, or I'd sell them like at sporting events, whatever. So I've always been like driven in that way of like trying to sell things, trying to market, trying to customize something that redistribute myself. And then my freshman year of college is really when I started the business I have now, which currently is like social media marketing, really to put it in its simplest sense. But more specifically, my focus is on Instagram stories and teaching small business owners how to market using Instagram stories. Part of that is teaching through my Instagram channel and also teaching a lot on podcast here, some on YouTube. But it's a really fun, enjoyable, and rewarding profession for sure.
And podcasting. Luckily for us, the show goes on with we could be indoors and
Yes,
podcast. I love it.
yes, absolutely.
So you've just, kind of breezed over everything that you've done as far as, growing a business. So let's just really start, from the beginning. Like,
hmm
you mentioned your business really started to take off, and it sounds like you really started to take things seriously kind of your freshman year in college. And that's kind of where I was like, oh, okay, this is actually a thing. My dad was an entrepreneur, kind of used to parents being around, which then you meet other people and you're like, that's not necessarily the norm. So
hmm
how were you able to start, I mean, to even get things started as a freshman in college? Like, how did you even start that, and being in school full time, playing football, all those different things?
Yeah, yeah. So it was really my first summer before classes even started, before football really even got too serious. I was able to look ahead and see that, of course, like it was coming up on fall, coming up on classes starting, coming up on football season. But I had this chunk, which was really only a 2-week window left of time before I was going to get started. So I knew I wanted to start this business. I really had to hunker down. So I spent 6 hours a day for like 2 weeks straight in our university library. At the time, I was at Georgetown University out on the East Coast. And I was just spending hours on hours building this course, because that's what my business first launched as, was just one online course recording all the videos, writing all the copy, designing the websites. It was very, very sloppy. And that was something that I think we can talk a little bit more about early or later, and the importance of just creating something sloppy and making it messy and not worrying about making it perfect. I was kind of forced to make it imperfect and forced to just kind of say, like, this is what I can get done in 2 weeks, and that's as good as I can do. But because of that, I was done building the course by the middle of August. Football season started, and then as soon as football season ended, I launched the course. So I was forced into that imperfection, but I think it taught me a lot of really valuable lessons.
A lot of valuable lessons for sure. So, you mentioned force, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
was forced to do this.
Mm-hmm.
The pros and cons of being an entrepreneur is that you're forced, but you're never really forced, right?
Absolutely,
Because
yeah.
at the end of the day, you get to make the decisions, which
Mm-hmm.
which can be empowering, but also debilitating as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, you've had this 2 weeks. How how were you able to prioritize, and why do so many people, I guess, just get stuck?
Mhm, mhm. I think priorities is the biggest word you just said. That's like where everything comes back to for me. Um, I have had a very clear set of priorities for most of my life, and if my schedule doesn't match my priorities, then something has to change there. Either my schedule has to change or my priorities have to change, and I'm not willing to budge, and I would assume most people aren't willing to budge on what their priorities are and what matters to them in their life. So my schedule has to change accordingly. Of course, that's not easy to do. That's not something that we all like to do. But if I have different goals and I have a different dream for my life, ultimately, like, I have to live that uncommon life. I have to have my schedule look different than someone else. And like you said, yeah, it's not a forced thing where like there's a boss telling me to come into work or I have to do this thing. It's a self constraint. And it's discipline that it's a lot of self discipline. But for that same reason, it's also very, very rewarding when you set up these deadlines for yourself and then you're able to meet or even surpass your own expectations.
Yeah, I love that you say, priorities and like the self constraint. So
Hmm.
I find, working with a lot of clients, there's a lot of women who listen to this podcast who struggle with, with food and exercise, and even coming down from like the day. I think our day-to-day priorities, our day-to-day habits can really reflect on a larger scale, right? Of like
Hmm.
what you do in your day-to-day, how does that reflect your resiliency and your mindset moving forward? So why do you feel like it is hard for people to prioritize, or what are some things that you've done, or maybe that you grew up with, that just helped you to really be firm in what's important to you?
Hmm. Hmm. I think that some people approach starting or not being able to set those priorities from just not knowing where to start. That's a very understandable place, or maybe not knowing how to start. I think the beauty of the internet is that there's so much virtual help. There's like literally you could learn anything you want to on YouTube to learn how to do something, or to get advice on what you should be doing. But then ultimately, it comes back to this fear. And I think the fear is oftentimes of imperfection, the fear of making something that isn't totally perfect. I have coached so many clients who have a fear of like publishing a website because it's not exactly the way they want it, or they struggle to put their face on camera on their Instagram stories because they don't love the way their voice sounds, or they don't do a Facebook live because their makeup isn't perfect that day.
Mhm.
There is no such thing as perfect. And when we try to uh, make things perfect, they never get done. When we try to live up to this impossible standard of perfection, it holds us back from ever getting things done. And I like to say, it's better to have started imperfectly than to have not started at all. And if we're trying to start perfectly, usually we're never going to start at all because you're never going to reach that perfect status. So it's definitely a fear driven roadblock from starting these things and pursuing these goals and prioritizing the way we know we need to.
I love that. It's the fear of starting, and also the
Hmm.
perfectionism. And I think it really boils down a lot to lack of confidence.
Hmm. Hmm.
So what are some ways that you've helped, let's say your clients, for example, to get over that, rip the band-aid, right? Like
Yeah.
action builds confidence, but like what are some ways that they've been able to just do it?
Yeah, yeah, I think starting small is big. When I first started with my business, I was teaching about Snapchat. And one of the fun added bonuses of Snapchat was that at the time, a lot of people were like, I just don't feel like my audience is on Snapchat. That's perfectly fine. But if you're scared to put yourself on camera, shouldn't you be using this platform where your audience isn't there, to just start putting yourself on camera? Today, TikTok is kind of like the same sort of thing where people are like, I'm scared to go live on Instagram. I understand that. That can be scary. So why don't you try it out on TikTok? Why don't you just start making a Snapchat video and don't even send it to anyone? Just keep it on your phone. And then maybe eventually you start sending it to your friends. So starting with these baby steps, even starting with an Instagram story before a full Instagram live or an IGTV, just starting with the small baby steps to realize that it's not that bad. It's not that scary. You're not going to get thousands of hate comments and direct messages and people ridiculing you. You're always going to be your own worst critic.
It's almost like a confidence or an ego. What's the opposite of an ego boost? But like you're not that popular. Like people
Yeah.
aren't going to write you hate mail just because you put up a bad angle of a
Yeah.
video.
Yeah.
PSA though, everybody listening needs to pause this episode and go follow Brock on TikTok, because that's like the best and worst advice. We're talking about prioritizing and getting things done. But for those who live under a rock, tell us a little bit more about what is TikTok and kind of where is TikTok going? How is it helping people in this sense?
Yeah. TikTok is the fastest growing social media platform over the last 2 years. It's now, I believe, top 5 in the world in terms of social media users. It has one of the most engaging, uh, highest engagement rates of all social media platforms. It used to be known as Musically. So if anyone has like younger kids or nieces or nephews who used to use Musically, Musically was bought out by a Chinese company and was rebranded about 2.5, 3 years ago as TikTok. Um, and the reason that TikTok is so popular and is growing so quickly is because they spent so much money on their algorithm. But without going too deep into that, basically, just to give you an overview, TikTok is an app where you can create fun, creative videos. Oftentimes, these are lip syncing or dancing videos, but it's not exclusively that. There is user generated content, skits, comedy. It's basically just like a short form video app similar to Vine. If anyone remembers Vine from back in the day, it kind of has that quality to it, but it's very, very popular right now. It was actually a year ago now, a little bit over a year ago, had my first, yeah, I know it's crazy that it's already been a year. I had my first viral video on TikTok. At the time, I had 300 followers. Within 24 hours, that video was at like 1 million views. And that's just because, like I said a minute ago, the algorithm on TikTok is crazy how advanced and predictive it is. So that video got pushed to over 1 million people in 24 hours. The next day I made another video with like a bunch of my football teammates. That went mega viral and is now at like 10 million views. I was reached out to by the owners of TikTok, and they invited me in that video to be a part of their Super Bowl ad this year. Unfortunately, I couldn't do that because of like NCAA rules. But that was a really cool opportunity. And so it's a fun, exciting place. And I've been able to leverage my popularity on TikTok to growing my other social platforms like Instagram or Facebook, where I might do more direct business related things. But it's a very fun platform that I can serve my audience on and just have a break from the normal Instagram life.
Yeah, it's so fun. It's so
Mhm.
fun. And this almost reminds me of how I built confidence of going live on video. I think people see me. So I do a lot on the news now, my local news, of talking
Okay.
about nutrition and things like that. And people are like, wow, you make it so easy. And I remind myself, I started on Periscope. Like if
Mm.
anybody
Hmm.
remembers, Periscope was around for a
Yep.
hot second. I look back, I recorded videos every single day for like months on Periscope. And like you
Hmm.
said, I think we underestimate the small steps and
Hmm.
how they really build up to that big confidence, whether it's
Absolutely.
video or, you do a lot of public speaking. Tell us, how have you been able to transfer some of those skills?
Yeah, absolutely. So public speaking is, I think, everyone's number one fear. Like they would rather be swimming with a shark than standing on a stage in front of their peers. Fortunately, I grew up with a mom who was very much in the spot on TV, on stages. So from a young age, I got used to that. So now I feel very comfortable public speaking and speaking on camera. But I think that just it's the same kind of thing of like putting yourself on camera. It's baby steps. It's baby steps. I know that Toastmasters for a lot of people has helped a ton of people. And then some things that I've learned from, I took a college class on public speaking. And some things that I learned in that class is after the first 90 seconds, it gets easier. So if you can wait a minute and a half or just look forward in your head to that 91st second, like literally scientifically, your stress levels will go down and you'll relax. And then also I think that this goes for whether you're speaking on stage, doing a podcast, an Instagram live, whatever it may be. I think that extemporaneous speaking is the best style of speaking. And basically that's a super fancy term for speaking off bullet points. Rather than trying to perfectly memorize a script, going to the fears of imperfection, rather than trying to perfectly memorize a script or just trying to wing it every time. I think that, at least for me, what works best and what most people would say works best and sounds most conversational is to have bullet points. That way you hit your key talking points, you mention what you wanted to mention, you talk about the tips you wanted to share, but also your conversational storytelling is very important, and you allow that to kind of naturally flow like a conversation every time you speak.
It reminds me of like weddings, right? We've all been to weddings where the best man or the maid of honor gives like the most rehearsed speech. And you're like, I can't even try to cry at this or, or any emotion because it's so scripted. And then
Absolutely.
you have those other weddings where it's kind of off the cuff, but they know what they want to say. And it's
Yeah.
like, has the audience crying and laughing all at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you have that one drunk uncle who has no notes and no speech prepared, and he's just going to wing it and just talk for 30 minutes.
Yeah, I was going to say for that extended period of time. Yeah. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
yeah.
So good. So Toastmasters, that's a great tip as well. I've done Toastmasters and it was a little weird because it's all different ages and you've got this older generation and young people, but I think that's the beauty of it. It's people who are outside of your network who are going to give you real feedback and, um, tell it to you straight.
Absolutely.
Sorry, squirrel. Speaking of bullet points and saying I'm focused. Okay. Didn't you like MC events too?
Yeah, so I've recently started doing that. Yeah.
Let me go back because I think it's funny.
Okay.
Speaking of weddings, you're also like an MC as well. Is that right?
That is apparently my newest profession. I put one of those like anonymous response bars on my Instagram stories in the middle of the football season. I was bored, and someone was like, "Hey, I want you to come to my wedding," and I was like, "Is this for real?" And the person was like, "Yeah, like I don't know if it'll ever work out, but yeah, I'd love you to." And I was like, "Wait, let's actually talk about this." And so we planned it out. And it was a beautiful wedding. It worked out that it was only about 2 hours away from where I went to school. So I brought my best friend with me, who is an extreme extrovert. Like if I'm a positive, outgoing person, he is that to the nth degree. So we went to that wedding and we emceed it. We had a great time. We got to dance with everyone and like lead some choreographed routines and like kind of introduce the wedding party. And then from that, we like emceed a charity event at a local high school a couple of weeks ago. And it's funny because every time people come up to us and they're like, "So this is just like what you guys do for a living? You guys are just like MCs?" And we're like, "No, we're
This is
college
my
football players.
second event.
We're
Yeah.
students. Yeah, this is like our first or second thing we've ever done." And they're like, "Oh, okay." But apparently that's one of our new job titles that we can add to our resume.
That is hilarious.
Yeah.
Straight hustler in college. I love it. I relate to that so much. So, I mean, we're talking about just you've built this business, you've got all these different things going on in your life, but what I love about you and your energy and why I wanted to have you on the podcast for people to understand is you do it all with such a positivity, like, and you have fun doing it. And I think so often, especially in times like this with the coronavirus, we get scared, we get,
Mhm.
all this negativity. So what is it that holds people back from dreaming, not only dreaming big, but
Mhm.
staying positive in their actions towards those dreams?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that self-talk is something that's very important for me, and the power of language, the way I talk to myself or about myself. A skill that I recently picked up, and this was actually given to me by my girlfriend, was labeling the different parts of yourself and even giving them names. So if you think of someone who has like if you've seen the movie Split, that guy in that movie has split personality disorder, where literally each of his different personalities like takes on a different shape and has a different name. So if you're ever, and Beyonce's done this, like there's plenty of examples. Beyonce used to do this. So many famous celebrities have done this. until they've gotten fully comfortable being themselves. And it's basically like, let's say you're about to go live on Instagram, and suddenly you feel scared and you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm not perfect. My hair looks bad. The lighting's terrible. Everyone's going to judge me. And you're feeling that fear for a second. Instead of saying, I'm scared and I'm feeling this fear, you can rename that person in the movie, in the movie
It's so
Split.
it's so crazy. I love it.
Yeah, it's in the movie Split. I think there's like a name. One of his split personalities is Patricia. So like maybe that's not you who's getting scared. That's Patricia. Oh, that's Patricia. That's just like my scared self. That's my not confident, not business owner self. And you can also do the same thing to create an identity that's like a really confident version of yourself. And this is what Beyonce would do when she was first starting out earlier in her career. She had this personality that she would step into. It was almost a character that she was playing. And this character that she would play when she was on stage was one that was very confident and like provocative and really confident in her body and a great singer. And so she would just, when she went on stage, she would become that character, become that role. And it would allow her to be more comfortable until eventually that very confident self merged with the current self that she feels when she's not on stage, or when she's, when you're not on Instagram live. So I think that self-talk is very, very important. And even just like the terms of saying I'm an extrovert versus I'm extroverted. So rather than saying I am this and I'm defined by these qualities, rather than saying I am positive, I have positive qualities. So
Mm.
I generally, for me, speaking, my baseline is upbeat, high pleasant, high energy. But I don't think there's anything wrong with someone who's maybe a little bit lower energy and they're still as pleasant. I think that I'm also reading a book right now called Permission to Feel.
Mm.
And I think that uh, there's not anything necessarily wrong with feeling any of the emotions. Some emotions are more uncomfortable or more comfortable than others. And I think that I allow myself to feel them all. And because of that, I'm able to stay at my baseline and stay generally in the yellow zone, so to speak, the zone of high energy and high pleasantness for the most part on my social media.
I love that it's like removing the labels. I
Hmm.
I do this a lot with clients too, and working with, intuitive eating is, let's say they're walking into a room, right? And it's kind of the same idea of having like this alter ego, but starting to just label and like notice things going on around you. I
Hmm.
think anything that we can do to take ourselves, get out of our own heads in that moment,
Yeah.
whether it's relabeling or like re-identifying, like you said, the more you can do that, the more you condition your brain to get outside your own head and to just
Hmm.
become this person who you want to be, and stop saying, yeah, I'm, or people always say I'm shy.
Yeah, I'm shy. Yeah, or I'm not a good public speaker, or I'm not confident on camera. I think it's a very important thing that we learn how much our language affects us, and we can then, once we learn that, really begin to shift and think about the ways we're using our own language.
Yeah, and isn't it, it's just amazing the mindset shift, and how, we're talking about public speaking, we're talking about going on video, but how it really transfers into all these different areas of your life. So,
Hmm.
let's use like sports for example. How have you been able to transfer this positive mindset, let's say like on the field while you're playing football or in your workouts? What's that look like for you?
Yeah, I think that that's a great question. It's something that I've developed in the last maybe year or two, and that's really separating myself and my identity from myself as a football player. So really, I guess to put it in its simplest term, it would be called detaching from the results. And what that would mean is, yes, the results do matter. Yes, college coaches get hired and fired based off winning games. Yes, quarterbacks, which I am, are judged based off touchdowns and completions and interceptions. Um, but ultimately, those results, and even being a football player, that's not where my identity is rooted in. That's not where I draw my self worth from. And so, if I have a bad day, which we're all going to have bad days, if I'm not feeling confident, if I'm not my normal upbeat, peppy self, if those things aren't the case right now, I know that that's not my identity, and my identity isn't rooted in those things. So I can analyze a bad day of football. I can watch the film and come back for a better day the next day, but I'm not going to take it home with me and beat myself up for the rest of the day, because that's not where my identity is rooted.
Right, it's just one piece of the puzzle, not the
Absolutely.
whole puzzle.
Hmm.
Um, so hold on, I had a thought where to go. Uh, okay. Sorry. Lost my train of thought. So we're talking about, oh, this is what I was going to say. I love that you talked about your identity, and I think that's going to serve you so much when you graduate and you move on from football and things like that. A woman I used to work with, she's a dietitian at
Mm-hmm.
Purdue and works in athletics. I had a short stint in sports nutrition, and she actually wrote a book for athletes trans,
Mm,
because so many athletes tie their worth and their
yeah.
identity to the sport, that
Yeah.
they graduate and let's say they don't go on to play pro. They're like, what do I do?
Yeah.
Do you know any athletes, or like do they talk to you about that in sports, or what does that look like?
Yeah, they absolutely do, and I think that that narrative is becoming a lot more popular because, especially universities are really concerned about that for their student athletes. I think that UC Davis does an amazing job in preparing us. They have one of the few programs in the country that literally every student has to go through, and it prepares you each year. There's like steps you have to take, boxes you have to check off in order to like prepare you for what they call launch, which is our post. That's what we call our post graduation phase. And it's really they harp on this fact that like this is not forever. This is just setting you up for that next stage in your life. And there's lots of counselors and lots of resources that we have at UC Davis that help us with that transition. And I know tons of success stories of former teammates of mine who are now owning businesses and working at high profile jobs and are very successful. But I still also do recognize that for everyone, even someone like myself, who I'm pretty firmly rooted that my identity is not as a football player, it's always going to be tough just because you've been playing that sport for so long. And for anyone, when you're changing jobs or leaving a job or getting into a new career, it's a challenge because that variability and that uncomfortability, like humans aren't necessarily built to thrive in that. It's a reason that we're all so stressed out and we're all like kind of freaking out right now with this panic, is as the panic is created and as there's so all this change going on, it's a cyclical process that kind of just fuels itself.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's say, somebody who's listening to this right now is in the thick of this pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
and they're kind of almost like at this identity crisis, right? Let's say, like for me, I'm a fitness instructor and my gym closed, and for whatever reason, I can't teach fitness anymore. And that was the only thing that I've ever done. Like, what tips do you have, or maybe something that you've seen with your own coaching clients, of how do we detach from that identity?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think it's really tough. And um, I think that for me personally, my faith is what allows me to detach my identity from football or from my business or anything like that. But I think that right now in this time that we're going through, and I've actually been talking to some of my other like entrepreneur friends who I've met over the years at conferences and stuff about kind of how we're all feeling and handling this right now. And I think that one of the best silver linings of the whole nation going on lockdown and all that is that we have an opportunity to learn and to try new things and to experiment. And yes, there's a lot of stresses around like paying bills and stuff, and I totally respect that for people. But like a lot of people are also having the opportunity to stay at home and rather than just watch Netflix, like consume an online course, learn a new skill for their business on YouTube, start planning, their business for the next 2 or 3 years and look into the future. So I think that this opportunity or this time at home might serve as an opportunity to kind of hit the reset button or the pause button and learn a new skill, pick up a new training, or just spend more time brainstorming for the future.
It's just so ironic how we live in such a go go go
Mm-hmm.
society, and we always say we don't have enough time, we don't have enough XYZ, and now all of a sudden it's like everything for most people
Yeah.
has come to a screeching halt.
Yeah.
And I know you're faith based as well, but I kind of feel like that it is a sign from God just saying, hey, humanity,
Yeah.
you better slow down if you want to speed up.
Yeah.
What are some of the habits, with the time that you have, of course you still have school and things,
Mm-hmm.
what are some of the habits that you're continuing now to kind of help you get through this time? But just in general, what are
Mm-hmm.
habits and some of your daily rituals that help you stay in that positive headspace working towards your goals?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've picked up a few new ones this year. The first new one that I started January 1st, that's been very big for me this year, is a morning devotional. So every single morning I wake up and I do an hour of worship music. Usually it's the Sunday Service album by Kanye West and his choir that he put together. Listening to that, I have a daily reading plan that I got from a local church up by UC Davis. So I'll read through a couple different verses or chapters of the Bible. And then I'll do a guided prayer from the church that I go to in LA when I'm home, which is called Church Home. And they have the Church Home app, which they have a great daily
What
guided prayer.
what a name. Church home.
Church Home, right?
The church when I'm home.
Yep, exactly. It's perfect. And so I do a daily guided prayer with that. And so that's a great way to just put myself in that mindset of gratitude. Scientifically speaking, joy is very rooted to gratitude. Like they're very much tied together. There's so much research supporting that it's really tough to be joyful without being thankful and having gratitude, and vice versa. So I think that starting my day with that gratitude and that devotion sets me up for a more joyous day. I think that right now, especially with everyone kind of in limbo and kind of like being home for so much time, uh, setting a schedule that you can still stick to is still really important. Even if you have nothing to do, still setting a schedule like, hey, I'm going to work out for this amount of time, or I'm going to do yoga, or I'm going to read for an hour, and just holding yourself accountable. Because something that also needs to be considered is eventually we're all going to go back to the real world. We're all going to go back to school and work and jobs and family. And so it's important that we don't lose grasp of our discipline that we've built over the last, over our entire life, really. And that we don't totally lose that over the next few weeks or months.
I know I've started to sleep in a couple days. Like I'm a 4:30, 5 a.m. riser. And
Uh-huh.
I've been reading about how important sleep is. Like I need that reminder of like, this is important. And I'm starting to sleep and I was like, this needs to stop. This needs to stop right now because like you said, even just keeping a schedule, but even just a checklist of like you
Yep.
said, okay, I'm going to do my devotional today. I'm
Yep.
going to work out today. Whatever you can do to maintain some sort of normalcy. I like to say
Yeah.
like a new norm right now
Yeah. Yeah.
so that you're not even more distressed once everything goes back to normal.
Totally. I love that term, the new norm. Yeah.
Yeah. And remembering that it's temporary, right?
Yep.
That gratitude. So my fiance and I, we ended up having to cancel our wedding this week
Mm.
and postpone everything. And I mean, I was stressed for like a little bit, but so many people reaching out to me like, oh, you must be so stressed. You must be so upset. And honestly, I wasn't
Mm.
because of exactly what you said. I think I practice gratitude on such a regular basis and have such a strong faith that when you are in that place of daily gratitude, you can't be mad. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you just offer it up and it is what it is.
Hmm.
Okay. Trying to think. Anything else? This is so good. Anything else that you feel like we should cover or you want to wrap up on in particular?
No, anything's fair game. Yeah. No.
Okay. So I'll say bye, but don't actually say bye. I'm going to do a couple like rapid fire questions because
Cool.
those are
Yeah.
always fun,
Yeah.
and then we'll wrap it up. Okay.
Okay.
Well, Brock, this has been so much fun. Before we end today's episode, we got to ask some rapid fire questions
Absolutely.
because it's what we do, and I know you're
Hmm.
ready. I know you're ready for it. I didn't send
Always.
and disclaimer. I didn't send him these questions. Like he doesn't know. This is
No.
off the cuff.
Yep.
So first thing, it's Friday. TGIF. What's the
Hmm.
best thing that's happened to you this week?
Ooh, best thing that's happened to me this week. I got to fly out to my girlfriend runs track at Iowa, so I got
Oh,
to drive across the country with her to come home because obviously everyone had to get home, especially to California. So I got to spend a couple long days on the road with her, which was nice.
and that is the true test. They
Oh
say a
yeah,
road
oh
trip
yeah.
is the true test. What is your drink of choice?
Water, non-alcoholically. I drink a ton of water. Like literally, I only drink water when it comes to non-alcoholic. My alcoholic drink of choice, because I am of age. I'm 23. Actually, well, I'll turn 23 next week, but uh, I'm over the age of 21. My drink
Happy
of
early
choice.
birthday.
Thank you. My drink of choice is Hennessy.
Hennessy. Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. Okay. What is your favorite workout right now? Or mode of exercise, I should say.
I love lifting weights, and I recently changed up some of my technique in hang cleans. So I've been loving hang cleans recently.
I love me some hang cleans. Don't ask me to snatch. I will hang clean all
Oh
day,
yeah,
but no
no
snatches.
overhead for the quarterback. No.
Yeah. Yeah. No thanks. Not good. What are you listening to right now other than Kanye?
Oh, other than Kanye, DaBaby and some Lil Uzi Vert.
Those are good. Those are good. I
Yeah.
love it. And last thing, when you lay your head down at night, what are you grateful for?
Oof, what am I not grateful for? I've been starting that's another habit I started recently, was a gratitude journal before bed. And I feel like I could fill the entire journal every night, but I try to limit myself to one page. Um, that's really tough. I think I'm really grateful most of
You can
all, and
say a few. You can say a
most
few.
regularly, I'd say, for my family. We're all healthy as of right now, and we have a great relationship. So I'm able to come home and still live in a healthy environment. I think a lot of people, unfortunately, are confined to an unhealthy or a challenging environment in their homes right now. But I have a very supportive, loving family, and we're all very healthy and work out and entrepreneurs and own businesses. So it's a really positive and uplifting place to come home to.
Especially when you're gone at school for so long. It's like an unexpected
Yeah,
vacation a little bit. Love it.
absolutely.
Well, if our audience wants to find you, where's the best place? Obviously, we talked about TikTok. We're going to link
Yeah.
to that. But where's the best place to find you if anyone has questions, or tell us a little bit more about some of the services that you do right now?
Yeah, I think the best place to connect with me is on Instagram. It's where I'm most active, and I really place a lot of importance on the Instagram DM. So if anyone's listening right now, and they had any takeaways or they just enjoyed listening today, I would love to communicate in the DMs. Even if it's just shooting me a little message there, or a wave or anything like that, I would appreciate that. My name on Instagram is Brock11Johnson, the 1 in the middle, Brock11Johnson. And I'd love to connect there. And also, right now, I'm offering Instagram reviews on Instagram. So I'm like reviewing people's accounts and kind of giving them like tips of things I think they could do better, or do less of, things like that for the future. But really, Instagram is the best place to connect and grow our relationship.
So, your Instagram reviews, let's say somebody is listening to this episode and they're like, all right, I'm fired up. I'm going to start that business. I'm going to do that thing. How can you help them?
Yeah, so the Instagram reviews are available on reviewmyig.com. And really, what I'm helping people do is I'm reviewing their profile, because that's when the followers are either clicking the follow button or they're not. And studies show that it takes 7 seconds or less for someone to decide whether or not they're going to follow. It's so quick. It's so quick.
That's
So that first impression really matters. So the Instagram reviews that I'm offering is basically like, I'm going to go through that as a new potential follower, but also as someone who is an Instagram expert. And I'm going to break down like, hey, here's something that you could change. Here's something that I think you're doing really well. Here's the vibe I'm getting from your Instagram. Here's like my just general thoughts. And here's even some strategies for content and techniques that you can do for the next few months moving into the future.
Love it. So you can help with basically any industry, I love it. So anybody can uh, get value from this. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It has been such a joy to have you on today. What a great way to head into the weekend. And we'll be sure to link everything in the show notes, and we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Bye.
It was really, really an honor to be here. Thank you.
Um, sorry. Wait just a second.
Cool.